Friends of the internet, my name is Teacher on the Radio, and I want to welcome you to the second ever edition of the Music Nerds Record Club, episode 2. We are a skeleton crew of men in black today. Everybody's got their Johnny Cash birthday winter wear. And today I found my copy of the vinyl of This Is the Sea by Mike Scott and Waterboys, released in 1985. This was Scott Greenberg's suggestion. Also with us today is Rick Quinn from Pop Matters. Scott Greenberg does Debt's No Honest Man Can Pay radio podcast. And Joe Guinness, we've got him out of semi-retirement. And there's even rumors that Joe and I are going to reboot the Babyfish fanzine. And former lead singer of Underwater Rain, whose entire demo is now on my SoundCloud page. So here we are for MNRC number 2. Scott, take it away and tell us about why you picked this album, and then we'll follow our batting order. Everyone, let's give it up for Scott Greenberg.
Thank you, Andy. Scott Greenberg, host of the Debt's No Honest Man Can Pay podcast, available almost everywhere you get your podcasts. I love This Is the Sea by the Waterboys. Whenever somebody wants to talk music and wants a recommendation for something, I always go to either this or my all-time favorite, Darkness on the Edge of Town by Bruce Springsteen. But I especially love recommending This Is the Sea because in my eyes, I wanted to say unqualified, but not unqualified. But it's one of those classics that just endures. I have been a fan of this record since it dropped back in 85. There is a multi-disc box set that drops next week. I cannot wait for it. I had previous knowledge of the Waterboys before this, their third album. Played a couple of their songs on college radio. Andy and Joe introduced me to them. We saw them open for U2 on the first leg of the Unforgettable Fire tour. And I'm thinking, yeah, these guys are pretty good. But nothing could have prepared me for this one afternoon. I was driving around with Joe, and he puts on This Is the Sea, and I had no idea we were listening to This Is the Sea. And first thing I hear are this Morricone-esque horn figure, this setting of the mission statement. That's just kind of like, it's like you're in for not just a rock and roll record, you're in for this literary novel. I can't decide if This Is the Sea is the equivalent to a novel or a collection of short stories. Doesn't matter. It will not deter your enjoyment. In come the Ennio Morricone horns, or as somebody I used to work with said, mariachi, and I had to keep my eyes from rolling out of my skull when he said, "Oh, the mariachi." No, it's Ennio Morricone. But nothing could have prepared me for The Hole of the Moon. That's one of those songs that comes around so rare in our lifetime that just grabs you by the collar and shakes you out of wherever your head is. And I said, Joe, who is this? And please tape this for me. And this was back in the days when I was broke as a joke. And when I had a spare buck, brick of Maxells to Joe. Joe would hook me up with music that just to this day leaves an indelible imprint on my soul. This Is the Sea, also the third album, or I should say the final album with Carl Wallinger, who really makes his mark on this record. I'm like, make no mistake, Mike Scott is a world-class badass songwriter, but Carl Wallinger really just kind of puts his imprint on this album, especially The Hole of the Moon. The Hole of the Moon is just such a perfect pop song. There's rumors that it was about Prince, although Mike Scott is coy about it. Mandy Moore covered it, which is another reason why I would take a bullet for that just beautiful, beautiful woman. There's just so much going on this album. Mike Scott, he shows on this album that he is just a brilliantly, deceptively simple songwriter, especially in songs like Spirit. And there are two versions of Spirit. On the original version, the version you get is a little less than 2 minutes, and it's beautiful. There's a longer version. I don't like it as much. It's so deceptively simple, and poetic, but not in a reach for the moon way, but just in a way that makes you go, huh, I could have said that, but you didn't. And he wrote this, and it rings so true, and it just has such impact, but it's not bombastic. It's just great, deceptively simple writing. I've got a bunch of notes here, and I hope I can get through to all of these, or at least the things I want to get to. The Pan Within. There's a lot of what I like to call hypnotic mantras on this record, and The Pan Within has my favorite. Swing your hips, loose your head, and let it spin. I love it. It's hypnotic, and it elevates the notion of free their asses and their minds will follow, or more currently, lose yourself to dance. Medicine Bow, Be My Enemy, two of the best Bob Dylan songs that Dylan never wrote, especially Be My Enemy. Old England, that's also very Dylan-esque, but it's bleakly poetic. And again, that hypnotic mantra, children stare with heroin eyes. You're not sure quite if Mike Scott means it as a surface statement or if there's something lurking beneath it, but it's haunting nonetheless. And then a song like Trumpets, I feel is kind of it's like a cousin to Spirit. You know, just that deceptively simple writing. Trumpets has this subdued urgency, and there's ironically not a lot of trumpets. There's saxophones, there's glockenspiel, but it's deceptively simple. And I feel like Trumpets does for the subject of love what Spirit does for the subject of spirituality. And then the title track, This Is the Sea. This, I feel like this is Mike Scott's Van Morrison moment. Again, you know, he's got that mantra, that was the river, but this is the sea. You know, just I love how he'll just grab a hold of a phrase and he'll repeat it, or he'll repeat part of it, and that cadence becomes an instrument unto itself. I don't know. I think I might have gotten to everything I needed to say. So I'm going to hand this over to Andy.
Scott, hang on the screen for just 1 minute. We were in Ken and Barb's house, and yes, my parents' names are Barbie and Ken. We were in Ken and Barb's house in the ravines in near 9 Mile Road in Southfield, Timberline Road to be exact, up in my little loft bed, my large upstairs loft bedroom, covered in posters, as my rooms are still to this day. I still decorate like I'm 15, just like more. Just throw the posters. Mine's a little bit more intense now. I'm a folk artist.
Now you got frames.
No. Some of my rooms are just posters, just collaged in insanity. But in any event, I got a handwritten letter from Mike Scott, and you were there when the day it came in the mail, and we opened it together and read it together. And
I don't remember that.
I wrote a handwritten fan mail to Mike Scott, and he wrote back a handwritten letter. And that was the fall of '84, before we made it to the Unforgettable Fire at the Fox. And just keep that in mind, that we were, you know, there was only a few steps between us and the people that we were listening to, and that we were writing about. And I think I bring on Joe next. Joe and I, in the tour that followed This Is the Sea, were writing for Karen's magazine, Disoriented Rain Dance. And I was also WSHJ, and Joe and Scott taught me how to be a DJ, and I'm still a DJ to this day, but it was Uncommon Ground that Joe was doing. I was a junior, he was a senior, and he brought me under his wing. And it was, I think, fall of '85. So this would have been Joe's first season out of school. And he didn't follow Scott to East Lansing, as far as I know. He was just kind of bopping around. And I was a senior at Southfield High. And we were in the tracks. That was like, of all the venues we went to, the Blind Pig, St. Andrews Hall, the Art Center Music School, Paradigm Center for the Arts, Paychecks, even Old Miami, Hamtramck Pub, all these places, I think Tracks was one of the bleakest of the places. It was like somewhere on the far east side, and it just felt kind of like metal. It's like it was like there was a metal band that was there. And here is Mike Scott and the Waterboys. We saw Husker Du, 10,000 Maniacs um, at that thing, and we spent, I don't know, probably 3 hours in Mike Scott's hotel room talking about the meaning behind this album. And I was kind of spinning out of my years as a young youth group religious zealot, Rick, and I was kind of spinning into my more hippie new age years. But I was all obsessed with the spirituality of this record. And Joe had been reading a lot of indigenous writers. Joe had turned me on to Black Elk Speaks and a few other. There's a few other of these books. There was one book we had called Touch the Earth, which was like a picture book, about indigenous ideas. And so I think Joe and I kind of were sitting at the edge of the hotel bed, kind of like making Mike Scott into this poet prophet, very much a Dylan figure to us, very much. And I very much felt like if I had been, 20 years old or 19 or 17, whatever I was, I think I just turned 18, in the early 60s, would have been like to sit at Dylan's feet. And Dylan probably would have been an asshole from what I've read about Dylan, the people who sat at Dylan's feet. But Mike Scott was not an asshole. But I think he was a little bit overwhelmed by the erudition of these like interview questions. These were all like, master's thesis, abstract level. Like every interview question that Joe and I threw at this poor man was like some kind of, Zen koan meets, undergrad thesis. And he said, "I'm not Gandhi." He said that. He said, "I'm not Gandhi. I'm smoking a cigarette." And I'll never forget that. That was like such a great moment. But the tracks on the record that ripped me with that is this idea of this is the sea, because of what he says. I hear there's a train that's coming down the line. It's yours if you hurry. You still got enough time. You don't need a ticket. And again, think of Slow Train A-Comin' off of Dylan's Religious Era. Think of People Get Ready, which was getting a lot of recycled playback around the time. Okay. I hear there's a train. It's coming down the line. It's yours if you hurry. You still got enough time. You don't need a ticket. You don't pay no fee. You don't need no ticket. You don't pay no fee. That was the river. And this is the sea. And it starts with these things you keep. You better throw them away. Turn your back on your soulless days. Once you were tethered and now you are free. And so this became a kind of intermediary between me leaving, high school youth group, kind of Bible study, spirituality, on my way to vast counterculture spirituality. And this was about a year before I took the leap into hardcore drug use. So I was in my brief straight edge phase at the time. And I think I must have had this on a cassette and I had a little Subaru with a cassette deck. And I think I just wore this thing out. And I was trying to think about this now with streaming, you guys, that we have access to so much music that we don't stay stuck on a record the way we used to. This is one of those records that I memorized every word, every note. I was completely obsessed with this album. And I am grateful for the revival that Hole of the Moon has gotten, as Scott mentioned. But more revival is needed, and I'm so grateful we're doing it for Music Nerd Record Club #2. Take it away, Joe, the man who sat in that hotel room. It was like a dive hotel where Mike Scott was staying that night.
We also had another person with us named Carol, who she wasn't really part of our regular circle. She was a kid I hung out with a lot at that point.
Well, she posted the picture. I had never seen the picture of me and Mike Scott. I'll find it and I'll project it when we get to the free for all section. But she got a picture of me and Mike Scott together, and I had never seen that. And she posted it in a Facebook group called "We Remember Play It Again Records," because Alan Covan was carrying on about how great the Waterboys were. And so that was within the last year or so, before our reunion, brother, sibling. Right. Okay, take it away, Joe.
It's interesting though, a lot of things are interesting. Mike Scott wrote this the record before there was before This Is the Sea was called a Pagan Place, and that's where I came in. And my first copy, I probably bought it at Play It Again, was a promo copy with the stamp on there, if you remember that, on LPs. And inside it had photocopy of a Melody Maker or a NME review that was extremely laudatory, and it had the headline something like "Yet Another Godlike Genius." So at that point he was already tagged with this guy with giant ideas, universal themes and metaphors in his songs, the train and such. And he got even bigger with This Is the Sea. Scott, I really like your idea of the notion of it being novelistic or short story like, and I'd never thought of that before. But he leaves enough off the page, such as it is, to make it a little mysterious. But yeah, they often, these songs seem like they're very specific with very pertinent details left out. Like, is The Whole of the Moon about Prince? It could be. I would think, but what I do know is that he was very influenced and very obsessed with Prince at that point. And I think Wallinger was too, and it came out in this record a lot, that very keyboard forward, modern keyboard forward sound that they used, compared to the last records, which had, piano and organ and stuff. This was actually using synth patches and stuff like that. And if you can think about it in the context of Prince, like The Whole of the Moon, it also reaches for Prince-like ideas. And I also think he was, remember him covering Purple Rain at the time too, finishing off shows with that. I don't know if he did it Trax. Trax was a metal club, by the way, that did host a lot of good shows. And I remember it being kind of dank, but you were right up there. It was a small place. So not the palace that he maybe deserved, but he was a rock guy too. Where was I? One thing I noticed, Andrews, that you held up your record cover, and mine is a more recent edition. It does not have that cool spot lacquer watermark, the Waterboys thing in the middle, which is kind of sad. I remember a review of this record, speaking of the bigness of the record, and it was talking about Old England, and talking about how portentous it was, and it quoted the line, "Children stare with heroin eyes," and it said, "Indeed." Like it was kind of a pushback against his going for these big and obvious themes. And it's interesting because after he did this, he did somebody do my memory a favor and put the name of the follow-up record to this, the Irish record, which I'm embarrassed to say I can't recall. Fisherman's Blues. Thank you, Scott. Total opposite of This Is the Sea, and even anything that came before it. Like he got as big as the big music would take him with This Is the Sea, and then he did Fisherman's Blues, which was right, World Party. That was the funkiest song on Fisherman's Blues, interestingly enough. But yeah, he took it as far as he can go, and then he went real small and personal and intimate with Fisherman's Blues. One thing I can remember about that time is we talked to Carl Wallinger, and he told us he was leaving the band. Andrew, do you remember that? He mentioned that too, and then we brought it up with Mike Scott, and he was kind of incredulous that we knew. I might be imagining that whole exchange, but
I believe you that it happened, but I don't remember that particular part of it. But I do remember when World Party came out, and simply for their association with Waterboys, I was all in. And that was the thing. I think I knew that Waterboys were going to open up for Unforgettable Fire Tour. And so I had to have the Waterboys. You know, remember there was that
right.
whole like Simple Minds, Alarm, there was the Call. There was that whole genre of like the big sounding bands from United Kingdom, Scotland, Ireland. It's time to tip to Rick, and then we'll have a couple minutes just at the end. And we've got a special in the second half of the Music Nerds Record Club, a special memorial service, which will actually continue to take Scott, Joe, and I down our memory lane as we've reunited in these last few years to do these fun, crazy things together, just like we did when we were 18. And from Nashville, Tennessee, Rick Quinn.
You're muted.
I certainly was. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I've been looking forward to this discussion. This has been another opportunity for me to experience something that I missed at the time it was contemporary with me. It was just not on my radar. But let me tell you, I wish it had been, because this is the type of music that scratches the particular itch for me in music, in thought, imagination. I appreciated how Scott introduced this as having a literary scope. It is. I've always been attracted to music, and I'm not sure how to describe it. That's big, cinematic. It swings for the fences. It envelops you and invites you to be enveloped by something bigger than you. And these are all the things that I was feeling as I was listening to "This Is the Sea." Just a stunning record. I was struck right off the bat by the horns. There's not many rock albums that can use horns in a way that feel natural, and it was just a wonderful start. That there was "Don't Bang the Drum." That the image of the I know you're going to bang the drum like a monkey. It hits on those spiritual notes in a way that almost hints towards sort of an ecstatic abandon that just follows throughout the record. I loved all the little flourishes that I picked up here and there. The little bit of the Bowie chorus at the end of "Hole of the Moon" was wonderful. Several of you have already mentioned the themes of "This Is the Sea" and the metaphor of the train, and it brought me back to 1987 when I saw U2 in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and they did a cover of the Impressions' "People Get Ready," where Bono brought Winona Judd up to the stage, and this whole image of being called into something that brings us together and takes us to something beyond what we can imagine. It's just all over this record, and so I'm grateful for this group and this discussion to introduce me to a larger view of it than I'd had just being familiar with the single, and so I'm thrilled for this experiment and know that this is going to be something I return to again and again in the future.
I'm going to bring everybody back on screen, but I've got to share my screen here really quick. I've got these images to share for posterity with jogging our memory, I'm sure. Now, is anybody, he's still producing records and he's still active. Has anybody seen him in recently?
I saw him in the early 2000s at St. Andrews. and they were great. It was for, I forget which album. I'm like, not one of their better albums, but it was still great seeing them. And I'm jonesing to see them again. You know, that the albums are kind of hit and miss, but the last great album I think they did was Where the Action Is, which has an awesome song about Mick Jones of the Clash.
I've listened to, I think, all their recent records, and they're all fantastic. And I saw them in 2015, and I'm just still just so grateful that that happened. Let me show you these pictures really quick, everybody. So this is the centerfold. Joe, I don't know if you remember that you got the centerfold. We got the centerfold. That was the centerfold
with the staples
of the third and final edition of Disoriented Rain Dance. And as I've said before, the editor is a great person, but we have lost complete touch with them. And the one friend I know who from high school that I delicately mentioned, they're like, oh, she keeps a very low online profile. Like she's checked out. She's not on Facebook anyway. Here is that picture that Carol gave me when we weren't talking, Joe, and we hadn't talked for a few years. And I ran into Carol on the Play It Again. We remember Play It Again Facebook group. You must have taken that picture because I don't think there's anybody else there.
Must be me, yeah.
So there's a scrub-faced me, and I've got a sweater and a button down, and I had my hair cropped for my senior picture. I ended up growing it back out again. But this jean jacket I had was just this raggedy old jean jacket that we had painted all over. It had a giant peace sign on the back of it. But y'all check this next slide out. There on the left is him at the Tracks show. And then here he is at, Rick, guess where I saw them at? 3rd and Lindsley in 2015.
Wow.
He's touring also all this summer, but not in the United States. We would have to get over to Europe to see the Waterboys.
Let's do it. Let's get a grant.
He doesn't play in the States often enough here, which sucks. But man, he looked like a kid in that picture with you.
He looked like a tired kid who had younger kids in his room at 3 a.m. It's pretty, you know, that we had that moment where we're sitting up late at night in a rock and roll god's hotel room, like drinking up his wisdom, you know. I mean, that's like such a, like, I never realized, like, I read about that experience in other people's books, the idea that they meet somebody sort of transformative and get to spend that time.
Yeah.
That was pretty lucky.
He's 2 years older than Bono. So if this was fall of 85, he was 27 and we were all like, I think I was 18 and Joe was 19. So he was he seemed like an old man at 27 to us.
Yeah, they all did, didn't they?
What were you going to say, Rick?
How did this meeting come about? How did y'all land this conversation?
So Joe and I got really skilled at how did you interview Molly Tuttle? I mean, you just did an interview with Molly Tuttle. We literally, I don't remember if I taught Joe or Joe taught me. I literally would get out the phone book or call like whatever information was, whatever 3 numbers you dialed. And I would be like, I need the number for the Island Records, office in New York City. And they'd be like, okay. And then I'd call Island Records. I'd be like, hello, this is Andrew from WSHJ Radio and the Southfield J newspaper. And we reach, thousands of young people every week with and they never even asked a second question. That's
awesome.
They mailed me physical press packets. They mailed me free albums. And I was on the guest list for about 2 years when I was willing to do the work. I was on the guest list for every show.
Yeah. I think it was just like at that time, it was a market on the verge of happening with very few people covering it. And we came in just asking for crap and they were like, okay.
That's so cool.
Having been in like publishing for a while, I know that those publicity people would get pretty stoked if some kid showed some interest in an author, and would send them the requisite stuff. And if they had some platform that they thought would be useful, they would see if the author would do it. The same as them.
And with Disoriented Rain Dance, we sold ads. We had ads from like every like record store in the Metro Detroit area. We sent copies, I'm sure Karen probably put them in a nice manila envelope and mailed copies to some of these press people that had given us cachet. We know through Joe and I, through mutual friends, that the entire REM tour bus had copies of Disoriented Rain Dance #2, and they were passing it around. And we covered Michael Stipe. We covered 10,000 Maniacs, Lone Justice. I mean, pretty much every band that was on my playlist around that time. Husker Du is in there. And then Karen went off in one way and I went another way. And Joe and I had our all-night revelation in staying up all night, going to the Prince movie, and then getting arrested the next day. And we started Babyfish. And one of the first things in Babyfish, and I think the interview had already, I think we formed Babyfish in early winter '88, and you had already interviewed Mojo. So
it's possible.
So let's transition. Let's go to Paychecks. And everybody, if you're not familiar with Mojo Nixon, Scott and Joe, you guys take this one away. Let Rick and I sit back for a minute, and you guys talk story about the summer of '87 and all your encounters with Mojo Nixon.
Scott's got a great take on Mojo.
I completely spaced on the fact that you were there, so thank you for reminding me that. But this was the summer of 1987, and I was living with my roommate and bandmate, Wally Pleasant, who is an awesome singer-songwriter in his own right. Check him out. We were in a band together. We were taking summer classes at Michigan State, and he introduced me to Mojo Nixon and Skid Roper. And Wally was like big into folks like Mojo and Skid, and Jonathan Richman and Robin Hitchcock. So, Wally was always playing me these really cool, just quirky singer-songwriter types. And I can't remember the first Mojo song I ever heard was Amazing Bigfoot Diet, which I think maybe you told me about, or Stuffin' Martha's Muffin, which, that was the cool song that everybody played. But all I knew is that we listened to the album Frenzy quite a bit.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it, especially Where the Hell's My Money? And I actually, when our band broke up, the band I got into next, we called ourselves Ivan to Jesus, after that reference in Where the Hell's My Money, where Mojo says, right about now, Skid takes a stick, winds up like Ivan to Jesus, leaving dents on that puss bag's face, never to leave. So Joe is there covering Mojo for Babyfish. And Wally and I just were there and didn't know Joe was going to be there. So it was just a nice bonus to run into Joe.
Yeah.
The band Snake Out Open, they were fun, just like this crazy psychobilly band. But I'll speed up and tell my story so I can get out of the way so Joe can tell his story as well. But we're sitting there and we're watching Mojo and Skid, and Mojo's just this wild man. He's probably a little bit shorter than me, just all the energy in the world. And at one point, he's bouncing this like water jug and screaming about being a mushroom maniac. The next thing you know, he's sitting in a chair. He's got this like little fake TV screen around his head, and he's just like being a goofball. And at one point, he just really rips some serious slide guitar. I'm like, oh damn! Not only is he funny, but he's got skills, and I'm mesmerized, and like we're right up front, and I'm just like, damn! I'm just like enjoying being in this moment. And Mojo looks at me, and he's gonna have some fun with me. He goes, "What's the matter with you, boy? You bored? If you're bored, maybe you better leave. Maybe you better get your money and leave." And at that point, I am surrounded by like Frankenstein villagers, and everybody's like yelling, and I'm like, I can't protest. There's no winning this, so I just I shut my ass up. Everybody enjoys the rest of the show. And then after the show, we go to the back, and Joe's already hanging out with Mojo, and Wally and I go to stay. And Joe very graciously said, "Hey, hang out with us while we have our chat." And I just said, we introduced ourselves. I said, "Mojo, I'm the guy that you yelled at about getting bored." And he goes, "I'm just trying to get y'all fired up." And I had a little scrap of paper with me. And I'm like, "Would you sign this?" Like, "Sure." And I have this scrap of paper that just says, "Scott, don't get bored, Mojo Nixon." And just, it's a crappy little scuzzy little piece of paper, but it's a prized possession and something that, if I'm never going to get rid of. I know there's a lot of people are like, oh, it might be worth something. I'm like, fuck no. That's a piece of my history. So
It's priceless.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. Love that story. I mean, Mojo, especially reading that rider that Andy published, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
He, the idea of he wants the lights on, he wants to see the audience, and he wants the audience to see him, like somebody that fed on your energy and your energy in particular, like having you as a foil. I read an obituary that called him like his parody songs or spoof songs, but that's got it completely wrong. His songs were comedy.
Oh yeah,
he was like really fucking funny,
and he was subversive, like, going to put my face on a nuclear bomb.
Right.
I'm like, that still rings true today.
I worked on that playlist for you, Andrew, with I didn't realize he had a cover of Girlfriend in a Coma.
Really?
Yeah, a more recent
I'll tell you,
skid cover of Girlfriend in a Coma, and he had some good covers. He
a Be My Lover.
Be My Lover. There's My Condition just dropped by to tell me what condition my condition is in.
He even covers a Springsteen song that was like a B-side for like the Japanese version of Nebraska. I'm like, that's how hardcore it was. And I didn't realize that he did that until like maybe about 5 or 6, 7 years ago. Have you seen the documentary, The Mojo Manifesto?
I haven't.
So I knew about it a couple of years ago. And of course, whenever they tell you about a documentary, you're like, yeah, let's see if it happens, because it all boils down to funding. And you don't know, you find out about it when it's released by accident, and often like months after. So it had been on my radar. So unfortunately, it wasn't until after the news of his passing that I watched it. But it's so good. It starts with him after him and Skid split, and the quote unquote super group he put together for Otis. And shame on me, I kind of fell out of touch with his music after he and Skid split, because I didn't have a ton of disposable income to spend on records, and I had to be very judicious about what I bought. And Mojo wasn't getting played on the radio, and there was no Spotify, there was no Apple Music. So
listening stations.
No. Yeah, if you're lucky, there was a listening station, but that wouldn't be for many years to come.
Yeah. I stopped following him for a while too, but I always listened to Frenzy, and have been excited to discover some of the more recent stuff, and was always happy that it was still around. It was jarring to see his weight gain, because one thing, if you read that in that interview, is and he's talked about elsewhere, is that he rode his bike across the country. He worked at a bike shop like the Wright brothers, and drove his bike across the country, and was I don't know, maybe it was like a Joe Strummer marathon where he just did it on a lark and didn't realize what he was doing. But that was always pretty jarring. I saw a video of him wearing it was basically like an outfit made of a red check tablecloth with shorts. He was a fashion icon.
Yes. And he was a DJ on Sirius XM over on Outlaw Country. And fittingly, he passed away on the Outlaw Country cruise. But I loved, for a short while, he had a political talk show on Sirius called Lying Cocksuckers.
Yeah, he always sought out. He had his politics. He wrote protest songs. Or in a comedic way, or that were very clear. I hate banks
Oh, another great one.
I Hate Banks is so good, but I'm trying to figure out, like, I don't know if I ever really listened to much more than Elvis is Everywhere and a couple of the things. And then, Scott, I listened to your podcast and I was trying to figure out how to incorporate some of this into Teacher on the Radio, but we're still on a college station, on a real radio station in a community where the community standards that the FCC prattles on about in their policy. I mean, like my show's at 9 o'clock on a weekend morning where little children could be in the car going to the market with mom, you know. So
you should only hope.
I've got to figure out a way, but even if I excerpt our little group chat right now, I'll have to bleep out all of our cussing. But I would listen to your podcast, Scott, and every word was like a cuss word in his song, and so inappropriate too.
He actually didn't do a lot of cussing. He had a lot of suggestive language.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't piss in your mouth if your stomach were on fire. That one really stuck with me. Let me guys show you guys really quickly. So that's the cover to their breakout album from 1987.
Audacious.
That has Elvis is Everywhere. And here's one of the pages of Joe's fantastic article. And it says that Brian and I attended the great Mojo Nixon and Skid Roper concert at Paychecks. And the thing about Joe was so on his game. Scott, you said he was covering it for Babyfish. Babyfish hadn't even been invented. Babyfish was not even a baby in its fish mama's fish tank at that point. So I have no idea. Joe just knew
the DNA of Babyfish was Joe's experience at the Mojo show, which is fitting.
Well, I think Joe just knew that there would be a fanzine somewhere that wanted this interview. Like he was like a freelance. He was like the Hunter S. Thompson of our little world, you know. Yeah. So anyway, it's time for us to. This is Music Nerds Record Club, episode 2. I'm one of your co-hosts, Teacher on the Radio. I'm with Scott Greenberg, Joe Guinness, and Rick Quinn. And now we are to part 3 of today's episode, where we're just going to each take a minute or a couple minutes and talk about our recent listenings. And let's just keep in mind that your recent listenings do not have to be new music. It can be new music. And the batting order for the last few minutes is going to be Rick, Scott, Andrew, and Joe. So Rick, what have you been listening to recently?
Thanks, Andrew. I'll mention 2 things briefly that have really caught my attention. The first one is the Prelude to Ecstasy, the album by the Last Dinner Party. It's an all-female band out of the United Kingdom. It just fascinates me the more I listen to it. Baroque pop with a little Florence and the Machine, ABBA. I hear a little Fleetwood Mac's The Chain in there. Different time signatures, tempo changes. It's a great album. But I could go on, but won't belabor that. The other one that I have really enjoyed is the new album by Matty Diaz, Weird Faith. It scratches my singer-songwriter itch, but also hits on those themes of relationships, faith, doubt, questioning in the midst of all of that. It's an album I know I'm going to spend some more quality time with and kind of drill down on. But those are 2 of some of the things I've been listening to recently.
So I'm prepared to give the stink eye to Rick for stealing the 2 albums that I've been really digging a lot. You know, the Matty Diaz record, which is great. She first popped up on my radar when she opened for Waxahachie a couple of years ago, and saw her at High Water last year. Love this new record. There's this one song For Months Now, which is just devastating. And then FKM, which is, kind of, Liz Fairish. But I feel like with this new record from Matty Diaz, this is going to be for her what St. Cloud was for Waxahachie. And with an album like this and with an album like The Last Dinner Party, I'm excited because I've been going through a phase lately where I'm like, am I going to get past the point where everything is just fine Am I going to come across music again that makes me go, okay? And both of these I've given, like the last dinner party I've listened to twice, but even after the first time, I knew I wanted to hear it again. While listening to Maddie, I knew I wanted to hear it again. I knew, I was just delighted that stuff was jumping out at me, but knew that there was more to uncover, that there was more to unpack, and that I was looking forward to spending more time with it. Thank you, Rick, for framing it as Baroque. That's right on the nose with the last dinner party. Definitely hear the ABBA, so thank you for the confirmation bias on that. But I'm also hearing a little bit of Susie and the Banshees, a little bit of Sparks, and I'm probably going to hear like a million different other things in there. Their videos are a lot of fun too. I've also been listening to the new one by Brittany Howard, and I like it. I'm not sure if I love it yet. It's definitely a vibe. I enjoy it. There's moments that kind of feel like Prince. There's moments that kind of feel clubby, which I dig because I don't have a lot of clubby music. And then there's moments that I feel kind of encapture what I like to call Saturday afternoon 70s soul, or SAS. I just created a new acronym. Pass it along. And then as soon as we get off the call today, I am going to spend quality time with the new one by Idols. I like what I've heard off of it, and I like them. I don't know if I've gotten to the point where I'm a super fan, but I feel like this is something I should not miss and something I do need to spend quality time with. So this is on the platter next. I'm also thrilled to the gills, tickled to tears. There's a new single that dropped this week from Goat Girl, another awesome all-female band from the UK. Their last album, On All Fours, was my album of the year for 2021. There's a brand new single from them. Their new album drops in June, and it's called Below the Waist. Waist spelled Waste. Cannot wait to hear the new record from Goat Girl, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Andy and Joe are listening to now.
Thank you, Scott. And this, the way it's timing out, we're going to have a couple minutes at the end for a final round robin. We probably offline will schedule our next Music Nerds Record Club album to be determined. It'll be probably me or Rick or Amy Rock, who couldn't be here today, picking the next one. We've had some great regular memberships from people I think are taking a break from the new regular schedule. But given that Joe is in up the river from New York City, Scott's in Charlotte, which is about a good 6 hours from here, and I'm here in Cookeville, to have the three boys from Southfield and Lathrop Village all here together, it would be just great to be bonding like this so regularly. And I'm just so hyped for the Music Nerds Collaborative, and grateful to have Rick here today. Rick has been my Nashville version of U2 for the last 10 years before this reunion started going on. And I think the other Scott who was here was Rick's version of that. So it's just great to have the band back together. It's a super group, so to speak. So I've really enjoyed what I've heard of the new Beyonce, and I'm not a big Beyonce fan. I think I'll probably be more into Beyonce country than Beyonce pop, just because I don't listen to a lot of pop. I've heard one song off the forthcoming Casey Musgraves record, and somebody on one of the groups that I'm on described it as cottagecore hedge witch Casey. And she was like, I'm here for cottagecore hedge witch Casey Musgraves. I guess I'm going to be here for it too. I've only listened to a little bit of that last dinner party, but Rick, thank you for the tip. I've also dabbled in the new Brittany Howard, Scott, but again, like you're saying, it's just a vibe, and I'm just kind of, I've taken in a little bit of it. We mentioned on the last month, my friend Average Joey, his new, or maybe we mentioned it in our group chat, I can't remember, but his new run officially came out on February the 2nd, and I finally gave it enough listens to write a review of it, which I've posted at www.teacherontheradio.com. I'm trying to get back into writing regular record reviews and show reviews with anticipating doing more fanzines. I'm probably going to do one this spring, warming up to hopefully in the summer when we relaunch Babyfish. So I got you guys from December when we did our list. I then started reading everybody else's list, and a guy who's not a music journalist, he's just a philosophy professor at MTSU, where I used to work before my current institution, posted his list. That's how I found out about Spiritual Cramp. Then I like inhaled Spiritual Cramp, and I got all of you all listening to Spiritual Cramp through a rec on the list. So I went to see them live at Basement East the other day. They were phenomenal. I mean, just so fantastic. I had such a great time at Spiritual Cramp. And so I've been getting into punk and punk adjacent. I've done 2 weeks of punk on my Saturday morning radio show. And I got turned on to a group called the Dollar Signs. And I was looking for a show to go to next weekend. I was literally like just going on every band's website trying to figure out who had a show because I'm trying to go to a show every weekend from now until I die. So I found the Dollar Signs and New Junk City and Dim Wizard playing for $10 all ages in a little storefront venue in Atlanta. And they don't even sell advance tickets. It is $10 at the door. That's so flipping old school. What else do I have on here? Oh, I'm really interested in the new Sarah Shook. Now, they still are called Sarah Shook and the Disarmers, but the lead singer is going by a different name, Raven or River, and they go by they, them pronouns now. Yeah, River is they, them. I cannot wait for the new Sarah Shook. And I'm kind of excited about the new MGMT, but I'm also like a little bit like, I don't know if I'm going to like it. Also, I am not even trying to go to Dead and Company at Sphere. One Sphere was enough. We tried to go to U2 twice. We ended up losing a bunch of money because we got sick and couldn't go the second time. But the feeding frenzy in the Dead community is over the top around those overpriced tickets, when I can go to the Basement East this coming Thursday and see the world's first drag Dead band. They're called Bertha, and they are going to rock the Basement East this Thursday. And it just so happens that former President Voldemort, number 45, is going to be at the Opryland Hotel speaking to the Religious Broadcasters Association at the exact same time that Bertha takes the stage at the Basement East. It's going to stream for free on Nugs. Everybody knows about Nugs, that hippie website where they give a lot of live streams. Bertha's going to be, yes, Orange Thanos is going to be at the Opryland speaking to the Religious Broadcasters for his presidential run. So anyway, there was another Dead tribute band. I know Scott doesn't like tribute bands at all, but there was another Dead. I bet there's a great Springsteen one somewhere you would probably love. Joe and I went to see an REM one, and they were amazing. But anyway, there's going to be live, multi-gender, high fashion Bertha. I think they might be better than the Dead and Company, and they've kind of supplanted. There's some other Dead tribute bands I go to, but they've supplanted them as my favorite Dead universe band. I get my Dead fix in at Bertha. That's actually this coming Thursday, the 22nd. So I've got shows for the several weeks to come. I'm super fired up that we're going to keep this little podcast thing going, and we'll pick another. I know REM got back together. Oh my God. Is it Joe's turn? Isn't it? Joe can talk about REM getting back. Did you know REM got back together by accident?
They didn't play.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, did they?
Yes.
Somehow my takeaway was that, they showed up to see Michael Shannon's cover band.
They did, but a lot of them got on stage too.
I saw the picture. No, that's awesome. I can't. It's the whole cover band thing is funny because I wouldn't think I would appreciate that either. You know, as I'd take more Scott's tack, but when we were going to hang out, I'm like, I'm going to go and I'm going to have an open mind, and it was fun, you know. And then I read that book about the Tragically Hip, and the author spent, on several pages, maybe a short chapter on hip cover bands, which there's been hip cover bands since they were formed, he said, and just wrote about the nature of being in a cover band or a tribute band. But I was thinking about the Dead. You have to have your chops to play in a Dead cover band. You can't just imitate that stuff. You got to do your exploratory thing. Anyway, what have I been listening to? Nothing new this week. I've been listening to sort of hate listens or sad listens because Neil Young announced a tour. Is anybody seeing Neil Young on this tour? $200 to start. I haven't been so out of the concert game lately.
I got tickets for Bourbon and Beyond. Go look up that lineup and he'll be there. So I'm seeing him with everybody. Everybody is playing at Bourbon and Beyond, and I'm going to get to see him there.
Great. So I listen to a lot of Neil Young, old stuff, vinyl. Have poured a lot of money into Neil's pockets on vinyl repurchases for them. I also spent a lot of time with Drive-By Truckers because they're doing their Heathens Homecoming in Athens this weekend, which I've always wanted to go to. They do 3 nights at the 40 Watts. They're all gold, solid gold set lists. Going back to Springsteen, I saw a set list from last night. They've been covering Adam Raised a Cain lately, and they did that last night. So I listened to that. The most recent thing I listened to is Will Johnson's solo record. What's it called? I'm going to look this up real quick. The Centromatic guy. What's his name? Will Johnson, No Ordinary Crown. So he's put out solo albums for a while. This is his most recent. It seems a lot less jagged than some of that Centromatic stuff, which I love, which is that has that sweet combination of melody and noise that I just can't get enough of. So Centromatic, Drive-By Truckers, Neil, Michael Hurley as well, just inspired by his he's getting out on the road again. I don't know if y'all know Michael Hurley, one of the foundational figures in the freak folk movement, who I discovered oddly enough through the Deadwood soundtrack. Anyway, been listening to his endless catalog of weirdo folk music this week too. Another concert I couldn't get tickets to. I'm just too slow on the uptake. But one of these days I'll be there. Anyway, that's what I got.
So we are 57 minutes into our 60 minutes of Music Nerds Record Club episode 2. Last parting thoughts.
I'm sad that Winchell couldn't make it, and especially sad that Gus and Amy couldn't be here, because I would love to hear the next generation's take on This Is the Sea. I was really looking forward to that, but maybe next time.
We're also busy. She's moving. Gus has the front page of the school paper.
Damn.
Really good article. Hey, it'll be whoever shows up. Maybe we'll invite some new friends on, but I think when it was a 6-person, this felt a little loose, just a little bit looser, It'll just be what it'll be. I have wanted to say Will Johnson is now in the 400 unit, Joe.
Shit.
Yeah, he's in the 400. He's a regular member of the 400 unit.
Oh,
and
wait
he plays guitar and percussion.
Oh, I was about to say, did he take over for Jimbo? Because I know Jimbo just recently left.
No, there's a non-binary person named Anna Butters who plays bass.
Okay. And yeah, let's take a moment to pour one out for Jason and Amanda. That sucks, but after watching the documentary, it's not that surprising.
No, they told on themselves a lot in their records too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Rick? The songs, they tell on each other in the songs.
Oh, yeah. But I hope that they continue to be like civil to each other and remember that they still love each other in some level, and that I don't want to like be that person who puts famous people up on a pedestal, but it's hard not to think really, really just good, positive thoughts about those two.
Right.
I feel the same way, and I'm glad you said that too, because as you saw from reading on my page, And Rick and I have both spent a little bit of the time dancing around the internet, the larger internet conversation about it. But in particular, in the Jason Isbell fan groups, it's really bad right now. One Jason Isbell fan group completely shut down over this because the moderator was like, y'all are acting like babies. I'm not going to moderate a group like this. So see you, bye. And some of the most unbelievably sexist things about Amanda. Joe, here's an example. Shauna was my favorite Jason Isbell wife. I mean, like, what? How can you even go there? And then likewise, a lot of people saying he's just the biggest jerk. You know, there's Team Amanda too, and he's the biggest patriarchal jerk that ever walked the face of the earth all of a sudden, you know.
It's a world of wonders. I have no skin in the game of their relationship. It's too bad, you know.
This is why people should have a license to internet, and they should have it revoked if they're assholes.
Or at least there should be, like, I guess is when they made all those other like spin-offs, when it went to X and everybody left X, it's kind of spun off into a lot of different, you know, so it has gotten a little bit calmer, maybe because everybody's going with their team over to, but some of these ones, I can't even, like, I don't even know what they all are. And people are like, I've got codes. And I'm like, you have to have like a special secret handshake even to get on some of them. We're at an hour. Why don't you guys stay on just for a second and we can plot the next one. And thank you all for anybody out there who listens to this. It'll be archived in Facebook Live, on YouTube. The live recording will stay archived up on the internet as long as we have an internet. So thanks everybody for coming to Music Nerds episode 2. And I'm going to find the button to say bye-bye. Everybody say bye.
Have fun,